Over the past few years, my taste in games has begun to vary pretty wildly. I've become more accepting of some shooters and horror games, while as a little kid all I would play was Pokemon and Tekken. But despite my varying tastes, there's always been one genre of games that I've never really grown tired of or moved on from. Racing games. It's hard to say exactly why, as racing games are all vastly different from each other, from arcade races to kart races to sim races to RPGs? Okay. But I'll just sit down and play a racing game for hours without getting bored. Couple this with either a good soundtrack or my seemingly completely random collection of music, and I'll be occupied for some time. So I figured that I've played a lot of racing games in my short time on this earth, so why not do a top 10 about it? This list is entirely of my own opinion, so if you don't like this list, then please don't give me any grief over it. I'd love to hear your own opinions, but don't go into the comments telling me that I'm wrong or Hitler's offspring. Anyway, without further ado, here's a list of racing games made by a completely unqualified game critic who nobody's ever heard of. Yay! There are a few games that come even remotely close to topping Mario's near-perfect karting action, but surprisingly, Sonic is the one who comes closest. You know, this guy. Sonic 06. Sonic Boom. Sonic and the Black Knight. His best game these days is a goddamn kart racer. I picked this one over Sonic and All-Stars Transformed because, while Transformed is pretty awesome in its own right, it felt a little gimmicky at times, and its predecessor is the exact opposite. Fine-tuned, well-executed, and no bullshit. The tracks are great and flow really well, and there's a lovely soundtrack too, especially on the Samba de Amigo stages. While I would appreciate less Sonic characters, for example, Big, the big disappointment, there's a nice character roster, plenty of detailed tracks, and lots of challenges to conquer. Plus the drifting mechanics are pretty sweet, I must admit. The Sonic franchise has been going downhill fast for the past decade or so, but Sonic and SEGA All-Stars Racing, as well as its still pretty great sequel, are pretty damn fantastic games overall, and I hope they do more. Seriously though, Big the Cat? More like big fucking deal.
Well, big fucking deal.
Enthusia Professional Racing. No, I'm not going to build up for this one because I want to see the stupid look in your faces when you see the name and go, what the hell is this? Now he's just making games up. I assure you, this is a real game. Konami decided back in 2005 that it wanted a piece of the action that Gran Turismo 4 was receiving, so it came up with its own sim racer. Frankly, it didn't do too well, both commercially and in terms of reviews, but I adore this game. Thanks to this lovely meter, the game forces you to drive well. Go off the road, whoops. Hit an opponent, there it goes. Collide with a barricade, idiot. And if you keep screwing up, you can't progress. Simple. Admittedly, it's a bit cheap that the meter decreases when an opponent hits you. I mean, if you get shot and die, would you be the one to go to jail? Well, let's be realistic, no, because corpses can't be detained in prison, so... You get my point. Coupled with fun driving minigames, an odd system, and some pretty swish visuals, Enthusia was pretty underrated in my opinion. But I understand why people might not like it. For a start, the only real-world tracks are Nürburgring and Tsukuba. On top of that, every track has an original composition tied to it instead of a normal licensed soundtrack. Nobody likes these. Except for me. I think they're fantastic. Ring, a German track shaped like a lion, has the most badass music that you could possibly have in a racing game. I was originally going to ask Konami to reboot this series or release a sequel or something, but now that Konami has gone down the shitter, please don't. Just don't. Fuck you, Konami. Konami? More like, can't, Nami. Our previous entry, Enthusia, was all about finesse and realism, and while it is awesome, it did lack a sense of speed at times. So let's take that, stick it upside down, spray paint it neon colours, and place several homies and hot biatches around it. Ah, perfect! Midnight Club 3 is literally Need for Speed on crack. Oh boy, I have to start in a piss weak Jenna. Oh god, too fast! Everything in this game adds up to being one of the best races of its generation. There's a ton of cars, it's got a fantastic, memorable soundtrack, and while I think the visuals are a little muddy and jagged at times, the game is relentlessly fun. Blasting through downtown San Diego, Atlanta, or Detroit to sick hip-hop beats is infinitely fun. And guess what? You can do this! Sweet merciful crap, this is not realistic! I need to sit down. They even released a dub edition remix version, which added 25 new cars, a bunch of new music tracks, and a whole new city to explore in Tokyo. It's a little bland, but it's not aiming for graphical fidelity, it's aiming for sheer fun, and that's where it succeeds. When you're doing a top 10 list about racing video games, it's practically illegal not to include a Need for Speed game. Ironically, most of Need for Speed's gameplay would be considered illegal in real life. While the franchise has strayed from its roots, with Rivals dropping off the map and Shift being a very strange sim racer, I'm excited to see where the new Need for Speed reboot goes. If it's anything like Need for Speed Most Wanted, then I think it'll be pretty... Oh my god, you gotta be kidding me. To clarify, I'm talking about the 2005 game, not the 2012 one. It was good, but it seemed like every time I try to go to an event, I'm met with cops holding my progress, and then it just gets extremely annoying, and then I have to start at the beginning again, and I just... But Most Wanted 2005 doesn't really have this problem. No, rather than the cops hindering your progress, they are what's necessary to progress. You'll spend, let's say, 5/9 of your time racing other opponents in Most Wanted, and the remaining fraction dealing with the fuzz. No, not that fuzz, that fuzz! The cops themselves are a little overpowered in some cases, but the cop chases are easily the best part of the game. Getting yourself up to heat level 5 and dealing with Corvette cruisers, armoured SUVs and helicopters, all while trying to maintain some sort of goal, keep the pursuit going for a set time, wreck a set amount of cars, etc., is an extremely rewarding experience. When I was younger, me and my friends would all try to get the longest pursuit time possible, and while I made it to an hour and 5 minutes, I got floored by my friend who managed 90 whole freaking minutes. There's a good selection of cars, it lasts a good while, and while the customization has been dumbed down since Underground 2 when the visuals are almost as brown as your grandmother's chair that she sits all over little plushies and teddy bears on, Most Wanted is plain good fun, until you accidentally press select during a pursuit and your car resets, and why must I be punished for being fidgety? Unlike most of the entries on this list, picking a favourite Mario Kart title wasn't particularly hard. This might be subjective, but Mario Kart games do nothing but improve. It's fun to go back and see how older games in the series used to play, as they do handle differently and have a different feel to them, but I believe Mario Kart 8 almost renders the rest of the series obsolete. Now, while I haven't played Mario Kart 7 on the 3DS, I've played every other one. Personally, I think Mario Kart 64 deserves very little praise, as the courses are far too big and empty. And while Double Dash was pretty inventive, I can't excuse the atrocity that is Yoshi's Circuit. I fucking hate that garbage track. So while I considered Mario Kart Super Circuit as a contender for this spot due to the many hours that I spent with it, I decided on Mario Kart 8 as my favourite title. It seems like a bit of a boring answer, but this game is incredible. It remains the best looking game on the Wii U over a year after its release, for a start. The music is also insanely memorable, and listening to the music that plays on Rainbow Road N64 gave me goosebumps. Taking into account the 2 DLC packs that we got, and that's another thing, DLC! We've got the most content in any Mario Kart game to date. 36 characters and 48 tracks. 40-fucking-8! And every single one of them, except maybe Cheeseland and definitely Yoshi's Circuit, are enjoyable as all hell, look gorgeous, and are a marvel in terms of design thanks to the awesome anti-gravity feature. It doesn't revolutionise the karting genre, seeing as F-Zero and Crash Nitro Kart did the anti-gravity thing first, but it adds a new dimension very rarely seen in racing games, and allowed for some truly outrageous course design. Mario Kart 8 doesn't do too many new things, but it does almost perfect what it does. Now, please Nintendo, add a goddamn battle mode that doesn't suck for the love of fuck! Unlike Mario Kart, Forza is a little more complicated. Forza 5, the latest introduction in the main series, is a pretty polarizing game. It had less cars and locations than most of its predecessors, for example. It got pretty repetitive also, despite the technical achievement that was the amazing graphics and the Prague circuit, which rocks my cock. So the award for Best Racing Simulator that also doubles as masturbation material for completely normal people goes to Forza 4, a game that really wowed me at launch. The jump from Forza 3 to Forza 4 made its predecessor completely unplayable. The driving engine was more fun, there were 500 cars, not including DLC, and some incredible tracks, including the beautiful Bernese Alps and the too gay-inspired family favourite Fujimi Kaido. There's almost too much to do in Forza 4. Tune your car, paint your car, set lap times, join a club, design liveries, and complete, this is just an estimate, over 1,000 career races and events. I mean, like, well over 1,000. If your interest doesn't wane after finishing the main world tour mode of about 150 or so races, by all means go ahead, tackle that. Knock yourself out. I missed the varied soundtrack of Forza 3, but that's all I can complain about, really. The fact is, everything about this game is brilliant. I honestly can't say much more. I'm not even going to joke about this one. This game has my respect. In fact, despite me loving it so much, I can't explain why it's at the 5th spot rather than number 1. I may have figured it out. The problem with games like Forza and Gran Turismo is that while they faithfully recreate the handling of real-world vehicles,
Go play PC racing games.
shut up, they can be a little po-faced in their execution. Cold. Lifeless, even. Race Driver Grid fixes that. It's a continuation of the V8 Supercars / TOCA / DTM / Pro Race Driver series, depending on where you live. But instead of naming the game depending on what region it was released in, it simply named the 7th game in the series, Grid. It's not the most enthralling name ever thought of, but the game itself is pretty enthralling. It straddles the fine line between simulation and arcade. There's damage and anti-lock brakes and stability management, but there's racing lines, braking assists, and the much-loved rewind feature, which allows you to jump back a few seconds and attempt that devilish set of corners once more. Obviously not realistic, yes, but you can't deny how much fun the game is. It has a great career mode with a lovely sense of progression, a fantastic lineup of cars and tracks, both real and fictional, and some pretty amazing graphics. Yeah, okay, they're a little brown, again, but back in 2007 these smoke effects were out of this world, and in fact they're still pretty good looking today. Grid is pretty much the pinnacle of the series. Grid 2 made it even more arcadey to the point where you were drifting around every corner, plus it was super repetitive. And while Grid Autosport came close, I'm not a fan of the camera angles or the extremely aggressive AI. Frankly, Grid deserves this spot. Let's play a guessing game. I'm gonna give you clues and you try to guess what game it is. Ready? It's the best arcade racer ever made. Okay, I'll stop there because every single fucking one of you already knows the answer. Burnout 3.
And you wrote down, what is Zelda? No, that's not the name of the game.
What makes Burnout 3 great? Is it the pop rock soundtrack? It helps, but no. Is it the sheer sense of speed? It's certainly a contributing factor, but no, that's not it. Is it the online play? Is it the awesome cars, the well-designed tracks, the satisfaction of pulling off the most epic drift you'll ever see in your life? Is it the crash mode where you crash your car and try to cause as much damage as possible? Is it the explosions? No. The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Takedowns. There is literally no greater feeling than ramming your opponent into a wall, shunting them into oncoming traffic, tackling them into a bus. Not only does it render your opponent helpless for a few seconds, it adds to your boost meter, extending it by up to 4 times. If you're good enough, you'll never need to hold the accelerate button in Burnout 3, just the boost button. I could go on and on about how mind-blowing this game is, but the fact is, I wouldn't be doing it justice. If you've got an Xbox 360, download it from the marketplace immediately. You're missing out on the best arcade racer possibly ever made. But make sure you turn off that god-awful DJ.
What crazy mother thought this game up? 6 rivals thrashing through
Excuse me,
traffic
I am trying to listen to my emo music. From first to last are great, and here you are interrupting them just so you can tell me that the sky is looking fucking great today. Fuck you! There is a difference between what I consider to be the best and what I consider to be my favourite. Case in point, this. Gran Turismo 4 it's a little polarising. Some consider it the best racer ever made, or at the very least the best in the series. Others claim this is where the series went downhill. So what's up with GT4? Is there car damage? Heck no. Can you customise your car? Pfft, barely. Bathurst? You bet your sweet ass it isn't here. So why the hell is a bumper car simulator so far up the list? Well, I don't know, maybe it has to do with the fact that it has the best handling engine ever made for a console racing game. Forza and Project Cars come close, but Gran Turismo just feels right for some reason. It's silky, buttery smooth racing. The game sports 700 cars, although roughly 675 of these are Skylines, and for a game in 2005, it's freaking gorgeous. It's also one of the only PS2 games that can be jacked up to HD quality too, which only helps its case of being possibly the best looking game on the system. Other than that, there's a ton of races, license tests, endurance races, rally events, regional events, a Ford Model T. This game is ballin', yo. The Gran Turismo series has sort of declined from here, yes, but these games are still fantastic driving simulators, and GT4 sticks its beautifully rendered neck out as possibly the best of them. Before we get on to my favourite racing game of all time ever made ever, and I'm pretty sure you're all scratching your heads wondering what the shit it actually is, let's get some honourable mentions out of the way.
Test Drive Unlimited 2. Such acting. Much Oscar. Split second. Is this Disney or is this Michael Bay? Blur. Racing for big boys. Dirt 3. Where's all the rally games these days? Micromaniacs. I'm racing as a motorbike man. What? Tonka touring cars. You can race on a fucking volcano. V8 Supercars 3. Or Tonka. Whatever floats your boat. And Need for Speed Pro Street. That's right. I like Pro Street. Big whoop, what a fun about it!
I hurt my throat doing that.
Holy shit, you guys, I can't believe it's fucking time for number 1.
So, here it is. Number 1, numero uno. The best racing game ever made, at least in my opinion. The one racing game to rise through the ranks as the underdog and unquestionably become king of all virtual driving entertainment experiences. Ford vs Chevy! Amazing speed, realistic handling, intense and emotional story! So much fucking content! But seriously, it's Forza Horizon 2. It seems a little weird to call a game that hasn't even been out for a year my favourite racing game ever, but Horizon 2 deserves it. It takes the established Forza Motorsport formula, but instead of racing around purpose-built circuits, you can cruise through the picturesque setting of Italy and France, all while taking out any bushes, fences, and vineyards you come across. Yes, this game allows you to channel your inner smuggler's run and barrel across the countryside in an effort to cross the finish line first. And honestly, it's the most fun I've ever had in a racing game, ever. It's also my favourite Xbox One game so far. Forza 6 is set to release next month, but while it's going to be some serious fine-ass madness, I think it'll just fall short of Forza Horizon 2's grandeur. But I think it's interesting that, while thinking about this video, Forza Horizon 2 kept popping into my head as the one I most enjoyed. Not the best, just the one I liked most. As I've grown up, I've realised that I've moved on from certain games and genres, and the strange mentality that a game's sense of worth to me, and a lot of other people for that matter, was measured almost purely by how old I was when I played it, and how many childhood memories I have of it. Based on that idea alone, Gran Turismo 4 would have taken my top spot. I played it for hours on end, starting over multiple times just so I could experience the game again. But I think I've moved on from that mentality somewhat. Many of the games I played when I was young, except for this horrid piece of shit, will always have a special place in my cold, cold heart. But contrary to popular belief, games have gotten better. There are still duds, for sure, but games have done nothing but improve. And I know not everyone believes that, especially the average Joe watching the video worshipping his original N64 cartridge of Ocarina of Time, but I base my opinions of games on how fun they are for me personally, not how early they were introduced into my life and how long I spent playing them. I mean, I put a lot of hours into Ford vs Chevy, horrid piece of shit that it is, because as a kid I was easy to please and didn't have many other games. So I think Forza Horizon 2 being at the top of my list is a perfect metaphor as to my current attitude towards games. Yeah, they were great back in the day, and for the most part they still are, but let's put them aside for a little bit and give the newbies a chance. Forza Horizon 2 isn't the best racer ever made. The open world could be a little bigger, and with over 700 events, fatigue may set in for all but the most dedicated of players, but as I launched myself over a hill, rocketed down the dirt track and sped into first place, I realised that it was my favourite racing game ever. Yeah, this whole video got weird fast. A joke? A joke, okay. How about every other racing game is a joke? Of course, these are just my opinions. There are millions of racing games out there, many of which I haven't played. But if you didn't like my choices, then that's fine. That's fine, totally fine. Mouth off in the comments about your favourite racing games. Not only is it interesting to see people's opinions, but maybe one of you will direct me to a racing game so awesome that I'll just poop myself. I mean, not immediately, just, you know, in general. Pooping your pants is yucky. Also, I know I said my next review is halfway done, but there were some complications and now I have to record all my lines and live action skits again, and you'll just have to wait a bit longer for my next proper review. Anyway, if you like this video, give it a like, comment on it, or if you want to keep up to date with my terribly amateur content, then hit the subscribe button. There's more reviews and top 10s on the way. And if you want to see me chuck a hissy fit, scream loudly, make inappropriate jokes, or all of the above, then check out the Acquaintances, a channel where me and a bunch of other intolerable Aussies play games and laugh and yell and annoy the neighbours. Yeah, modern entertainment!
Let's go.